I wanted to talk about some things that happened in my life and share part of my testimony. I I've heard and seen many people scrolling down through the comments on this video even that have gone through some of the same things that I went through, and not all of them are exactly not all of them are exactly what I went through. Some of them are slightly different, and some of the things that happened to me are slightly different, but I want to share what happened to me and how Jesus took, how he handled it, how he took care of it. And if it's happening to you, he'll do the same for you. Um, Years ago, when I was 13, 14, and I'm 29 now. So this was like 13, 14. I messed around looking at occult stuff. I dabbled in it. I was mainly interested in the astral projection side of things. And I read some different things on how to do it. I attempted to do it, and for the longest time, nothing ever happened. I messed around with Ouija boards, and as I got older, I started messing around with some drugs. Around about 16 or 17, I started looking into astral projection again. And I never really mastered that, and I quit trying. I could never do it on my own. It would just happen. And I would say that was the key. I can't say the Ouija board, even though the Ouija board might have been the start of this. I really don't know when the start of this happened, when all these events started taking place. It was either the astral projection, the Ouija board, or a combination of both. I can't really tell you which one. But as I got older, the astral projections started happening, but it wasn't under my control. I would have these episodes where it was almost like a lucid dream, but it would be right when I would lay down to go to sleep, not, and I would astral project. Now, I couldn't control it. Like, I could go over to the side of my body, but I couldn't leave the room. I couldn't get my mind to even, at the time I was still studying this, and they were saying different things, but I couldn't really do anything with it. All I could do was be out of my body, and it was weird and kind of scary. It excited me at the time because nothing bad was happening. But as this progressed and I couldn't really do anything with it, I stopped trying. I tried to induce it at first. It happened naturally at first, and then it kept happening and happening and happening, and I eventually got kind of tired of it because it was just pointless. But I would say probably a year or two afterwards of when this first started, it got to the point to where I wouldn't astral project. I would have sleep paralysis, and that's why I have this video pulled up here. Was the first thing that happened to me, and the reason I'm telling you guys this is because these are the starting events that brought me to the Lord. I was raised in a Christian family, but I never truly believed. I believed in God. I was not atheist, and I was not agnostic. I believed there was a God, and it probably was the God of the Bible, and Jesus probably was, crucified, died, and rose again. And that was probably true, but I didn't really care about knowing him. I was kind of angry at him and didn't really want anything to do with him. I had a bad opinion of God, a really bad opinion of God, and I was just deceived. But as I started messing around with these things and not really getting any of the results that I wanted, I started having sleep paralysis. And the first few times it scared me. Now, I never seen anything in the sleep paralysis. Sometimes the sleep paralysis would happen right after these astral projection episodes. Most of the time it didn't. Most of the time, after a while, the astral projection just kind of stopped, and it was just pure sleep paralysis. And it terrified me the first few times it happened, because I knew I was like sleeping, but I couldn't wake up, and I would just have to lay there and deal with it until I could wake up. And it's a creepy feeling. You can watch this documentary if you want to get an idea of sleep paralysis, but it's very creepy. I never seen any entities when I was in sleep paralysis. I never did that, but I it's almost like you could feel an evil presence around you, but I didn't see anything at that point in time. Um, I did see something eventually, but it wasn't in sleep paralysis. It wasn't like that. But anyway, after that had gone on, it got to the point to where I was having an episode of sleep paralysis, at least once a week, if not twice a week. Um, it got worse. I wrote it off. Didn't care too much about it. I mean, it scared me, and I don't know. When you're young and stupid, you don't do what you should do. I should have cried out to the Lord, but I didn't. And it's kind of funny, not funny, but it's kind of I mean, I guess like you could say it's kind of funny how all these bad things happen and you don't cry out to the Lord, and like he's merciful. He sits there and he waits, and he doesn't give up on you, and it's just like, why are we so stubborn? Why am I so stubborn? But these got worse and worse and worse, and then eventually other things started happening, and the sleep paralysis was about the same for most of the time. It got worse, but before it got worse, some strange events started happening around me. I know 3 occasions of where objects moved on their own near me. There was 2 that are very clear because they were in broad daylight. The other one was kind of in the dark, and I thought my friend moved it, but I mean there was other people around too, so they can all, well, he could witness to it because he's seen it. And then one of them, no one was around but me, and then the other one, people were around, but I was the only one to seen it because of the angle it was at. But the one that really got me the most, because I wrote them off always. Like I one of them I said, okay, well, my friend did it. The next one I was like, well, maybe the wind or the air condition turned on and somehow blew it. I don't know, removed it or did something. But this one right here, I couldn't, like, I was one of those people that I believed in like ancient alien theory at the time, kind of mixed with the Bible. But I didn't, it was I didn't believe in the supernatural. And I'll tell one of the stories, which was I was sitting in my living room with my best friend at the time, and then we had another friend. She was sitting back at an angle in the corner, just watching us, and we were playing some game. I don't know if it was like Madden or something. And we were playing a game. And I'm sitting, he's to my right, and there's a table to my left, a low down coffee table with a book on top, and it had some loose change on the top of the book. And my friend that was sitting to the right could not really see. He might have been able to see the very edge of the coffee table, but he couldn't see in the middle where the book and the change was. And I could see clearly, from my left eye, I could easily see it out of my peripheral vision, the change in the book. And we're sitting there playing, just cutting up, just having fun. And the game ended where something happened, so it was a pause in the game, and I'm just sitting there, I'm just talking, and I've turned my head and I'm just looking, and then out of the corner of my eye, I see that coin just fly across off the table, and I just stop and I look, and I just go dead silent because I clearly seen that, and I was just like, how did that happen? The other 2 events had happened, before this, so that third event really got my attention. And I went back and I looked over at my friend because I thought he might have seen it. I didn't really, wasn't paying attention to his angle at the time, but now looking back, and he's, he told me he didn't see it, but he heard it, and he looked at me and he goes, and you could see that he was scared because he realized that I didn't move that, because he could hear the change move, and because it literally went off the table, and then how change when it rolls around, kind of dingles and then drops like when it's spinning a little bit. He could hear it, and he was like, did you do that? And I was like, no, I didn't do that. I was like, it moved on its own. I was like, I told him right there. Well, my friend was really, he was really, kind of like paranoid. He was easy to scare, but he ended up. He was going to stay the night at the house that night. I don't think he stayed. I'm pretty sure he left because he was like, he got really scared of that. But which I guess I don't really blame him. But it that really opened up like my eyes. It didn't make me like repent or seek the Lord, or it didn't change my mind at all. But it got me like thinking, okay, there's something going on here. And I'd seen the other two events happen, and I tried to explain them away through science, and I don't know, if there's looking back, like all three, yeah, there something was going on. I mean, later on after that, I clearly knew it because I'll get into that, but um, not too long after that, the sleep paralysis would still happen, and during the well, not really during the sleep paralysis. Sometimes sleep paralysis wouldn't happen, but instead of it happening, it would be like it would be like feelings of being punched or smacked while sleeping. That would that started after all of those three events, and nothing else moved that I can remember. I think I would remember it unless it was in a different room and I just didn't really register what was going on. Just heard something, but um, after that started happening, it ended up like the sleep paralysis kind of didn't happen as much, but what would end up happening is I would have feelings of being punched or smacked while I was sleeping. I've had, I don't know how many, I can't really remember. Most of the time it was just being smacked in the face. It would be like I felt like something smacked me in the face, and I'd wake up, look around, and nothing would be there. Or punched in the stomach. Most of the time it was smacked in the face though. But the most, I'll give one story of that happening. I was actually not at the same house. I was down at my grandmother's house this time, and there was she had some cats and stuff, and I was laying in the back bedroom. I was going to sleep. It was dark in there, and it was pretty late, so I laid down, and I'm, resting, relaxing, just not asleep, but I'm just like really relaxed. I wouldn't say even almost asleep. I was just kind of, I was close to being almost asleep, if that makes sense. But anyway, I was laying there, and it was like all of a sudden it felt like a 3-pound weight dropped from a few feet above me onto my stomach. And when that happened, I jumped up and I was angry because I thought the cat had ran into the back bedroom, because the cats were really nice cats. So I thought the cat ran into the back bedroom, jumped up, and landed on my stomach. I thought he like jumped up onto something, then jumped down and landed on me. And then I sat up and I was mad, and I forget the cat's name because this has been years ago, but I I was cussing at the cat, and I was just like, wait a minute. And then I finally realized there's no cat here. None of the cats. And then I remembered none of the cats were inside. They were outside that night. We didn't let any of the cats in. So I was like, that scared me really bad. I ended up just going to the radio, and I turned on to the Christian station, because at that point I was just I mean, it hurt. Like, it felt like a 3-pound, 2-pound weight being dropped from a few feet above you onto your stomach. I mean, it felt like somebody punching you in the stomach really hard, or something like that. And I ended up turning on the radio station, and I forget, there was to a Christian station, and I remember I prayed, and I was just I didn't really change my heart of what I believed, or I didn't call upon Jesus at the time. If I remember, I'm pretty sure I didn't. I just was like, God, I never used the name Jesus, and if I remember correctly, and I never really meant anything that I said. I was just in fear. And so anyway, I eventually went back to sleep. That happened. Well, anyway, I go back to the house, which is the main house I was living in with my mom at the time, and it was the house where all the objects moved in and the other stuff. And I was going to bed one night there on the couch in the same living room where my friend was playing on the couch this time. We were playing the game when the objects moved, the coin moved. And I laid down, same scenario. I was getting to sleep, laying down, relaxing, lights out. It was completely dark in there. And this was the most terrifying. I mean, there was one more event that happened that was more terrifying that I'll get to in a minute. But this was the most one of the most terrifying events, second most still in my life. Well, there's been some things happen, but it was truly terrifying. But it was terrifying in a way I'll describe in a second. I ended up laying down, and as I was dozing off, I out of the blue, and I heard a voice, and it clearly said my name, and it was from the far corner of the room, in the darkest corner of the far corner of the room. And this was a pretty big room. It was the living room, so it was a pretty large room. So it's not like it was right on top of me. But when I heard this voice, I immediately, I mean, like not like a little girl, like loud, like scream in terror, and it wasn't because I was afraid of the voice in the way that it terrified me, but it terrified me in the way where I pulled the covers up over me, not because I thought this thing was going to kill me, but I thought whatever this thing was going to infect me. And I get what I mean by that was the voice was, I couldn't tell if it was a male or female voice. It it almost sounded like a feminine male that was like 3 foot high, like a small feminine male that had smoked too many cigarettes in their life, like just chain smoked like a billion cigarettes, like just raspy and no gender to it. And it was just the most disturbing and sickly sounding. It sounded sickly, and like if it were to touch me, I would get infected. Like that's how disturbing it was. Just disturbing is why it made me was so afraid. Besides the fact it was a voice just coming there, and I screamed. I put the covers up over me, and I screamed, and I was trying to crawl down into the couch, and I, I, I don't remember exactly what happened. I just remember eventually I turned on the TV because I didn't even want to get up to turn on the light because it was have to like walk all the way around and go really far. And then I turned on the TV and the TV was bright. It was a large screen TV, so it lit up the entire room. And I looked over in the corner. I finally looked over in the corner. There was nothing there. I mean, I was just like, and that terrified me. I ended up leaving the TV on, turning all the lights on, and going to sleep with all the lights in the TV on. That happened, and you would think that would get me to, like seek the Lord, but it still didn't. It's just I kept writing these things off as just like, well, it was just a dream. I was almost, or something. Okay, so move on. We moved out of that house. A year after we moved out of that house burned down. Kind of weird. Is my childhood home I grew up in. It burned down. So I moved into a different house, and I went the same thing. Going to bed one night, and I don't even remember going to sleep. Like this one was really weird. This is the most terrifying thing that have ever happened to me, and this was the start right here of like I didn't fully, I didn't get saved that day, but and I didn't completely change my opinions that day. But this right here was when I realized, okay, I don't know. I'm clueless about things, Lord, and you're gonna have to help me because I laid down. I don't remember going to sleep, and by this time I'd moved on to some different drugs, and I don't even remember what I was on. I could have, and I still believe I might have even died because or stopped breathing because I laid down and I don't remember falling asleep. I do remember looking at the clock and it being 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking I got to get some sleep. It's really late, and so I laid down and I opened up my eyes, and the entire room was just this weird shade of gray. And I looked out the windows, and outside looked like it was pitch black, but the blackness looked like a glowing black. Like if I were to step outside, I would step off into space, but it was like glowing and eerie. And the walls were like this glowing greenish gray, and it was just really weird. And it was like a setup, I thought. And I looked around, and I was thinking, what in the world? And I looked out the window, I looked back, and then I was thinking, whatever. And I like laid back down, and as I laid back down, it was like a presence of evil. Like it came into my mind. I was just like, "There's evil here." And it's like as I blinked my eyes, I thought, standing above me was something, and I pulled up a picture and I could say Grim Reaper, but the Grim Reaper doesn't do it justice. It was standing above me was something that looked like this, and it was like the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. And this is probably the best thing I can point out that it looked like, except it had like a glowing black aura, and it didn't have metal on its hands. This is actually how exactly the stance it was making, where it was like reaching out, except its hands were like black, like they'd been burned to a crisp, but it had the pointy like fingers, but just not as the gauntlets. And it was standing there, and it, I, I never felt so terrified. Like, you could put me in the room with a lion, and it wouldn't. I could not. This is why I wanted to share the gospel, because if I didn't see hell and I just seen the thing that took you there, I can't even imagine what hell will be like. And I was so I couldn't speak. I was literally I was trying. I wasn't even trying to yell out for God. I was trying to yell out for my mom at the time, because I'm telling you, I was so dumb, and the Lord, He has so much mercy on people in their youth, which is really good. Like, where we'd all have some problems, but it reached out, and like I could not speak. I couldn't yell. I was trying to yell, and I was so terrified I couldn't say a single word. All I could do is sit there, and it was like reaching out, but it was like reaching out really slow, and like real slow motion, like reaching for my chest, my heart. And I just kept sitting there, and it felt like it lasted for like a few minutes. I can't even remember. It's probably much quicker, but as it reached out, I was like trying to move, and I couldn't move because I was petrified. Trying to yell, I couldn't yell, and I literally felt like I was trying to yell and couldn't. And as this was going on, it was like I rolled off the couch, and I started falling off the couch. And as I fell off the couch, I woke up, my eyes actually in reality on the couch where I had laid down, and looking up at the ceiling. And I was literally sweating, and my heart was pounding, and I could literally feel the fear in my chest. Like, it was just like I opened up my eyes and just stepped back, like a thin veil between realities. It wasn't like a dream. It was more like, oh, I just went back into my body really quick. Like, that was still there, but I just couldn't see it in my real body. And I just woke up, turned on the TV, and like, I turned on the TV, and it was like straight on TBN, and whatever you think of TBN, it was some really, it was like late in the night, so it wasn't anything. It was Nazareth Village in Israel, and I just thought that was interesting. But it was actually somebody on TBN that I had met, that I'd seen on there, which is really weird. But I remember, as soon as that happened, after that happened, and I calmed down, I looked over at the clock, and the clock said, I think it was like 4:21 or something like that. And so it was like 20 minutes, and I laid down, and I didn't immediately go to sleep. So all this happened probably within like 10 minutes. There's like 10 minutes of unaccounted time. Maybe not even that, because I don't know how long it took that to happen, because I know I didn't immediately fall asleep. This has happened years ago. So there's like not that much time unaccounted. So it's not like I even had time to get into a deep sleep. Like, this just happened pretty much. And that was the most terrifying event that ever happened. At that point is when I really, it took all of that torture and terror in my life to finally, wake up. And I still didn't completely, just run to the Lord and beg for mercy, or run to the Lord and ask Him for help or anything. I just, I started kind of believing, which I think is the key. Is like, okay, there is an enemy, there is an afterlife. I had before, I wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, but I had kind of that belief of annihilation, and then you just sleep till the Lord. I was not materialistic, but I didn't believe in a spiritual realm. And even though I've seen all these things, I just would refuse to believe in this, and I didn't want to believe in it for some reason. I don't know. But I want to make another video, because things get much better, and the Lord, He let me see some things from His side. Not like some miracles, not seeing heaven or Him or anything, but I seen some good supernatural events later on. And I want to share them, but this video is probably pretty long right now. But before I end this one, and I'll make a part 2 to tell you about some of the things when I got saved, how I got saved, like truly saved, when I really, believed, and when things started changing, and some of the good miracles that happened. I want to show you some of these verses before I do that. So 1 Peter 5:8, be of sober spirit, be on alert. Your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. We forget this as Christians. We always think that it's the Lord doing something to us, or it's our own fault. But we have to remember we have an enemy, and he is real, and he does attack, and it's not just spiritual, or it's not just supernatural. I mean, he can attack through the mind. He can attack through, third-party objects. It's just, or third-party, resources like the television. So we need to be aware of that and put on the full armor of God, which is finally be strong in the Lord and strengthen of his might, and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God, that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. The struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, and against the worldly forces of darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore, take up the full armor of God. And you can read the full armor of God. I think you need to read that yourself, and stay in prayer and petition at all times in the Spirit, because as 1 John 4:4 says, you are from God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. And that's what we have to take away from this, that when I'll tell you right now, just to wrap everything up, when I called upon the name of Jesus, and really called on the name of Jesus, and started praying and asking in Jesus' name, is when all this stuff stopped. I said God many of times. It was when I focused on Jesus. And it wasn't me focusing. He called me, because I'll get more into that in a little bit. But the change had to do with Jesus. And all of these things have stopped. I haven't had anything like that happen in 7, 8 years. So that was about the time. Actually, probably longer than that. Probably 9 years now. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Just if you want to know more, I'm going to post another video soon about the good stuff. So you guys take care. God bless.